Welcome to Private Club Radio, your weekly source for industry education, news and discussion. Broadcasting from Tampa, Florida, ladies and gentlemen, here is your host, Gabriel Aloisi.
What's the future of club management? What's the future of private club leadership and talent? We're going to talk to two guys who I think have a great perspective to lend to this topic, because they're two young professionals in the club industry and two that I admire and respect. I really enjoy following both of these guys on social media and seeing what they're doing in their careers. We're chatting today with Ben McWilliams and Dominique Gray of Dunwoody Country Club. And these guys were so kind last time I was up in the Atlanta area to give me a tour of Dunwoody Country Club and what they're doing there. And I thought it was such a great story that we had to come on Private Club Radio and do it. Finally, all of our schedules came together, and this interview that you're about to hear is the result. Enjoy. I'm really excited to bring on two rising stars in the club industry, Dominique Gray and Ben McWilliams of Dunwoody Country Club, to the show. Gents, how are you doing today?
Doing wonderful. Thank you for having us on.
Excellent. Try not to freeze in this frigid weather. Gotta love it.
You guys have like a cold snap going on, don't you? That's crazy. It's too early for that.
70 to 40 in a day.
It's too early for that. Oh my goodness. Well, like I said, I'm excited to have you guys on because I want to talk about being a young manager in this industry and kind of where you guys see this industry going as two young professionals in club management. So Ben, I'm going to direct this first question to you. I know when you came on board at Dunwoody Country Club, you wanted to make some changes right away. Could you tell us about what that was?
Yeah, certainly. So I took over as clubhouse manager here about 2 years ago, and particularly for Dunwoody, we've seen tremendous growth here over the last couple of years, and just looking at the club as a whole, and kind of coming up and seeing how we had a lot of younger managers that were getting into the industry, but leaving before they even really kind of hit their prime, or they were able to really start doing work that they liked to do. So you weren't keeping talented individuals in the industry for a long time. Everybody was constantly trying to hire people. And I kind of took a step back and tried to find a system at the club that I could implement that would allow, opportunities for growth, development, to keep managers here for a long time. And to really kind of stabilize what we were going through, and looked at really approaching it to where I wanted our managers to try to work more of a consistent, 45-hour work week, to be able to have, some consistent weekends off. If you wanted to plan a trip or a vacation, you had a lot more flexibility in doing so, and try to create a little bit more of that work-life balance that everybody kind of aims to have for them, and really kind of get out of the mold of saying, because I worked, 65, 70, 80 hours a week, every week, I worked every holiday, I worked every weekend, saying that because I did that, they have to do that to earn their right. And I think just kind of getting out of that mindset and changing it to where, it took a little bit of an investment up front of being committed to the budget and adding an additional person or two in there, and then taking the time to develop our internship program, kind of expanding that to management development program, and a lot of steps we kind of put into place to create avenues for younger managers, and then just to keep people here for just more consistency. Yeah, it's really the big thing.
That work-life balance you mentioned is so important, and I think there's a completely different value system from the generation that came before, younger guys like yourselves and even myself. I actually kind of like it when I say that we close our office at 4:30, and people always kind of scratch their head when I tell them that. But we did it originally because I had a person who had a long commute. I didn't want her to have to go through rush hour traffic. So there's a value system that's changed. Dominique, what would you say attracted yourself to that philosophy?
Kind of goes hand in hand, like Ben talked about. You look at my people that graduated with myself from University of South Carolina. My fellow colleagues are not in the industry no more because of the amount of hours they had to work, and whether it's holidays and being away from their family and friends, all that kind of kind of jazz. But I mean, if you ultimately you look at it, I mean, think about blue jeans in the club culture, right? That was a big faux pas, 8 years ago. Now it's kind of club standard, to allow your members to have jeans to come to the property. So that kind of goes hand in hand with us as a philosophy of management and keeping your staff on board, where you want to, set the standard, but still be able to assimilate with the times, if you will. So right. Allowing us to have a larger management team and allow us to not everybody doesn't have to close, right? You have one closing manager rather than, everybody staying to the end of the shift kind of scenario. So it kind of works hand in hand.
Yeah. Ben, what have been the results since you implemented that? I know you probably, it took some time getting used to, but what's it been like since that's happened?
Yeah, the biggest thing that you look at for us is tenure of our management team. Before we really kind of took this approach and looked at it, I was doing really well if I got a manager to stay here for a year. They were looking at outside opportunities, whether it was club related or non-club related. Most of the times it was people from outside the industry were giving them opportunities, and they were leaving because, and the majority of those, were related to not having to work weekends or nights or having to close 3 days a week or, where it was. But, we didn't have managers that were staying over a year. And now almost every single one of my managers on staff has been here for over a year.
That's awesome.
And not only to go with that, we've created a development plan to where, when we did have a manager leave, I didn't have to post a job. I was able to promote from within. And really kind of continue to build, up from there. So you had somebody that was already in place that's been trained, that knows the club culture, knows the staff, knows the expectations, and already has a little bit of his own vision, where you're really not able to have much of a drop off. You kind of just keep going and getting better. And it's also brought in, through our internship program, we've had some younger managers that come on that have just been really, really strong candidates. And they see, a future here because they see that you can be promoted from within and be able to move up and learn and get exposure to a lot of different areas. So it's really stabilized, what we were, doing. And once you start to get people here for a year or two, you really start to get a lot more traction with stuff. A lot of times when you hire a manager, they spend 6 months getting used to the club, the members, the staff, and then you get kind of a sweet spot where they're starting to put all their ideas into place and they're starting to do things. But if you only have them for another, 3 to 4 months after that, you're not getting a lot of traction with things. And then you're changing over to somebody that has new ideas and new beliefs and all that stuff. So now, we have managers that have been here. The staff is more used to their management style. There's a lot more consistency with that. And even our staffing has started to kind of level out, stabilize, because there's less turnover in a manager. They're used to, things being a lot more consistent for them. So you have, just overall, I think it helps maintain your morale, and really kind of helps your environment, across the board.
Totally. I always say that, at least what I've found in my own business, is that people, money is great, but that's generally not the biggest motivator for people. If they're choosing between one place and another, it really comes down to the company culture, to the values, to that work-life balance you talked about, to the leadership, and to really feeling like they're a part of a team and doing something great. So how have you tried to instill that in your team, kind of give them a vision for the future, or have them realize what direction you'd like to see things headed? How do you approach that, Ben?
I think the big thing was kind of sitting back and look at it. And honestly, when Dominique came on board with us, this was the big thing that we talked about was kind of trying to create a vision, a picture of what we wanted the club to look like. He certainly has come from a background where he's, been at a lot of the top clubs in the country. And, we've been to a lot of places through CMA and through, our educational experiences. But looking at what we wanted Dunwoody to look at, and kind of defining that, and then creating kind of goals based off that, to where our staff, everybody knew what we were working towards. And we kind of took, the Platinum Clubs of America and wanted to be a Platinum Club, and not necessarily being as focused on the designation, but more so being focused on what it meant to be one of those clubs and what it means for our membership and what they should expect and what they should experience. So a lot of it was just creating common goals, creating a common vision for everybody, and then really trying to get everybody on the same page to where they understood what that looked like, and everybody kind of started working towards that same belief.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Dominique, as Ben mentioned, you've been to a number of the finer clubs in your career already. Even your young career, you've been a lot of places. What have you noticed been some holes or some areas that clubs could get better in terms of attracting some of that younger talent?
Ultimately, to be very upfront with the student or the entry level manager. When I was coming through, my undergraduate experience, we would always get a GM coming in. They're talking about how great the industry, how awesome it is, but they don't tell you about how much work they put into reaching their goal as a GM. So just being very upfront, being very blatant, and talk about not so much all the positive, but actually talk about, the gratification and the value that you get out of working that 55-hour week. Because, no one wants to do that. But, if you work 55 hours and you touch a certain family or member experience, you made, what it is to be a part of that culture, that club. So being honest and forthright. But ultimately, like Ben talked about, we lost a lot of our managers to outside entities because they were promising, you don't have to work weekends. I'll give you, $5,000 extra, and you don't have to work a Saturday or something like. But try to simulate that same kind of thought process with your management staff. So, like for us, we have a lot of our management are very gun ho, college sports fans. So how can we, make that person feel, welcome and loved at work? Well, maybe one Saturday after football season, that person gets off to watch, that big rivalry Alabama LSU game, which we just had.
Yeah.
Granted, our manager's favorite team lost, so that was a good thing to talk about with him, being an Alabama fan, but, allowing that opportunity for him to have that when you necessarily, me and Ben, we wouldn't have that opportunity when we were coming into the industry because it was that mentality of, I work every Saturday, you have to work every Saturday kind of thought process. So trying to be upfront with them and then kind of simulate, what are some things that they like to do, where they like been touched on, what do they aspire to do within their career field? Because it may not be club management. What can they learn from their role here that will help them, be a leader within whatever industry they want to be a part of. So I think those two things would definitely, allow us to get more young individuals inside the club industry. Because, trying to tell somebody, hey, you want to work every weekend, you're going to work every Christmas, every holiday, you won't be able to see your family on the holidays, and by the way, we're going to pay you, what, $40,000 to start your job. It doesn't look very appealing when everybody's getting these IT jobs, making $70,000, $80,000 fresh out the gate.
Yeah,
so
it's true. I think
trying to wrap their mind around it.
I think I just think you're so right in terms of setting expectations, how important that is, realistic expectations when people first start, because nobody likes surprises. But if you know what you're going into, and like you said, if you know what that reward is in terms of the value that you can provide for another person, touch their lives, I think that that's how you get people that will stick around past that 1 year mark for sure. Ben, what other opportunities do you see for young professionals like yourselves?
Well, I think club management as a whole is branched off into so many different things now. You look at just with what technology has done, what new avenues it's created. You see teams going more into social media and having people that are dedicated just to that, that are dedicated to marketing. You're seeing clubs that are doing stuff with recruiting, where they're, you have some clubs that are just focused on HR, that are just doing hiring and staffing and traveling to different universities and speaking. So there's a lot of different branches that are out there. And, you're seeing, we're evolving every day and clubs are coming up with incredible new ideas and new ways to provide for their members. And each day there's new opportunities that are out there. So it's incredible just to see what new things clubs are doing and branching out. And I think that's one of the best things about the industry is you very rarely do the same stuff every day. There's always new opportunities to get involved in, and clubs are always growing and moving in different directions. So there's always just a lot of different, opportunities for you to be able to get involved and engaged and really kind of find what you're passionate about and then, try to pursue that.
Yeah. Well said. Dominique, another question for you. How important is it to get young leadership into your club so that you get new ideas and fresh ideas? Because a lot of times, especially if there's not much changeover in the board in terms of the general makeup of the board, how important is it to get just younger folks driving some of the new ideas at a club?
Well, it's definitely needed if you want to keep that employee on board within said club. But like you just stated, you need fresh ideas. The membership wants fresh events every season. They're more in tune and aligned with your kid demographic, which, I mean, for everybody in the club industry, is everybody's favorite demographic, right? How do you please the kids, right?
Yeah.
You please the kids, you please the parents, right? So having those individuals who are, like Ben touched on, like closer to social media, closer to these new apps, TikTok, all these new different ways of advertising, what the club has going on. Because, when they become teenagers, I don't want to come to the club anymore. So how can we get, how can we think of somebody like, I'm about to turn 30, I can't relate with a, 15-year-old, but someone who's 24, 22, 21, 19, 18, they probably could relate to, what the individual is looking for within their quote unquote club experience. Cause they're members as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that we have to look at. So, getting the individual involved with it. I mean, it's great every year when we do the career fair, and you're able to see, where these ideas spark from. Cause I guarantee these great ideas doesn't spark from that, 75-year-old GM that's been in that club for 20 years.
Yeah.
It's come from, that fresh intern who's coming in with all these different ideas. And sometimes to a fault, having those very green employees are very, very, very awesome to have when it comes to idea sharing and making those thought processes.
Yeah. And no fault to the 75-year-old GMs out there. Of course, they're not incapable, I know, as you know, of creating new, fresh ideas. But a lot of times people just get stuck and comfortable. And that happens a lot. And if you don't change it up, then the experience gets stale, and ultimately membership begins to suffer, and the experience suffers, and the whole club ethos, I think, suffers. So I really think it is important to bring in some of those fresh concepts and listen. If you're a manager out there and you've got some new folks in there, listen to what they have to say and some of the ideas that they bring to the table. Ben, I'd like to ask you, where are you getting some of your inspiration from, and where are you guys coming up with new ideas and new things?
Well, I think I'm quite fortunate, here at the club to have the team that I have around me. And it kind of goes back to what you were just kind of saying. You can't, teach or train creativity for the most part. So I'm pretty blessed to be able to have a team here that has a group of very, very creative individuals that looks at stuff, experiences they've gone through their own lives, and sees how they can apply that to the club. Whether it's events that we do, our social director is very creative. She's kind of always pushing the limits on things. Most of the conversations I have with her are typically uncomfortable for me because I know she's trying to push us to do something different. But that's a great thing to have, because we've done several events this year that in the past I probably would have said no to, because it was stuff that we've never done. I've never was comfortable if the membership would enjoy it, if our culinary team would be up to the task. We've done a lot of stuff that have been a lot more interactive and educational and hands-on for the membership. It's stuff that they've never seen before. So it's been a lot of fun to watch that, and even. We had some interns here that were really, good with social media, and they completely redid our Instagram over the summer and streamlined it and made it to where everything was set up completely different in ways that I would never, ever think of. So there's definitely, I would say, a lot of that comes from the team that's around me, and I've just been fortunate enough to be able to surround myself with, good people. And that's really the best way to be successful.
Absolutely. I've got a friend, and he's always in my ear telling me that, Gabe, you got to take more risks. You got to take more risks, because when you're playing it safe, that's actually the riskiest place to be nowadays, because everyone is looking for to elevate that experience, and they're looking for something different out of the ordinary. Attention is so vital nowadays. So if you're actually not taking some of those chances and playing it safe, you're in a losing battle, I think. One other thing before we switch gears that I want to touch on is, for the younger guys out there, the younger gals, out there thinking about this career, what would be the best piece of advice that you'd have for them? Ben, I'll ask you that first, and then I'll ask you, Dominique.
The biggest thing that I would say, and I try to tell a lot of my younger managers, is to be patient. Everybody a lot of times goes into the industry and they chase the title or, a club specifically or something like that, and not necessarily what, the job that's best suited for them. So I found sometimes just being patient, do your homework, make sure you know what exactly you're getting yourself into with your job, where your long-term, career will take you. Sometimes people will look at, I can make, $10,000 more if I go to this club where, you may be in that same position for 4 to 5 years and not see much of a pay bump. But if you stay at your current club and you're patient, then maybe, in 4 to 5 years, you're going to make, $15,000 more than what you would have if you would have gone to other clubs. And not to say that, changing clubs isn't, there's nothing wrong with that. You certainly, each time you do, you're going to learn and do new stuff. But make sure you're patient, you're paying attention to what experiences you're going to get, making sure that you're constantly growing, and just really doing all your homework to make sure you're going to the right fit at the right time and how that's going to impact you for the next, several years. And not just that quick kind of 6 month to 1 year gap.
Man, that's so good. That's wonderful advice. Dominique, how would you add to that?
Yeah, so mine's actually on the opposite spectrum.
Yeah.
Opposite spectrum of that.
That's where we balance each other out.
That's funny.
What I would tell a young manager is always volunteer yourself. The reason why I've been able to be where I'm at in my career so far right now is just because I've always volunteered myself to step into the place. So if someone didn't want to do it, I'll be the guy. You don't want to go and unclog the toilets, I'll go do it because you're going to learn a different skill set. So being open to do anything and always volunteering yourself to do that hard project or do something that your boss didn't want to do. The reason why I'm really good at putting things together because I was able to do the schedule at a very young age when I first got my first career job because my clubhouse manager didn't think that it was worthy of his title, like someone else should be doing. So I said, I'll do it. So always being able to volunteer yourself to do different things is definitely where I would tell a young young leader in our industry to always, be looking, what can you do like right now rather than having idle time? Like, what can I be working on right now that's going to get me closer to my goal? So when I was very young in my career, I was trying to figure out what can I do now that will set me up for that role down the line? So, what skill sets can I learn, while, being an assistant manager that I know I'll need for the next leap? Because, when you get the leap, it's like, okay, we expect you to do X, Y, and Z. Well, you have to be predicated and be prepared for doing, said responsibilities. So trying to do as much as possible as you can while within your entry-level position. So I think very opposite on that kind of thought process.
But I'll add to that and say he's exactly right. And if you approach it with his mindset, and a lot of times, it kind of negates a little bit of what I'm talking about, because if you do volunteer, you are aggressive with your own education, your own learning, and how hands-on you are more prepared to make that next step sooner.
Right.
And so as long as you've done that and you're ready to go, then you're making the right move at the right time and you're doing what you're supposed to do. But you see a lot of kids these days that don't approach it like Dominique's talking about, and then they're also not patient. And then you see them go to the wrong job at the wrong time, and they leave the industry.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think those two pieces of advice actually go really well together. They go hand in hand in my book. So well done, guys. That's excellent. Dominique, you talked about kind of, that you described that hustle that you've got, that passion, that drive, and that actually kind of bleeds through into some of your personal life and what you're interested outside of the club business. So I wanted to make sure that we touched on that before we wrap things up today. So I know you've got a charity and there's other things that you're passionate about. Can you tell us a little bit about who Dominique is outside of Dunwoody Country Club?
Awesome. Well, it actually kind of pairs up. One of the coolest things I think we do here at Dunwoody is our charity. We were able to donate $500,000 this past August to Special Olympics in St. Jude.
Awesome.
So like my personal life of my nonprofit Race for Achievement, goes right in hand with what we do here at Dunwoody, with our membership being that tied to the community. So I do have a nonprofit based off my best friend, Taiwanza Sanders, who was the youngest victim of the Charleston church shooting 5 years ago. He actually gave us the idea to start the nonprofit. Me and my friends thought it'd be a cool thing to do to give back to our alma mater at back home in Charleston, South Carolina, and gave out our first scholarship. And then 20 days later, as when we lost those 9 lives. So told my friends that we need to kind of whip it into shape. Actually, got to be an actual organization. And since then, we've been able to give away almost coming up on $12,000 worth of scholarships. We fed and closed over probably 1,000 individuals in need in Charlotte. We do free SAT and ACT tutoring back home in Charleston, South Carolina, and always looking to give back to the community. At least what I do. I read the book Start With Why, and my why is to make those who I come in contact with feel loved and appreciated, and that goes hand in hand with what we do in hospitality. But what I like to do outside the club is bring smiles to people who necessarily wouldn't have that opportunity to have a smile brought to them, if you will.
Simon Sneck, it's a wonderful book. You're absolutely right, and man, how cool is that? Congratulations on raising those funds and helping these kids get to college. That's incredible, man. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Ben,
it's really dope to be able to do it.
Yeah. Away
from the club and do it at the club, actually.
That's
so
awesome.
It's really cool to be a part.
That's very cool. And you're heading to Europe soon too, kind of in that.
Mission, I am. So for my big 30, I turned 30 on the 19th, and my grandma was born and raised in Paris. So starting out my trip, I want to check that out and hopefully see where she was raised and see where my great grandparents got married, and then from there going up to Amsterdam, and from there going to Porto. Going to go to 2 port distilleries, so that's going to be pretty fun. Nice. And ending it with Madrid. So it should be a very good trip for me to take.
That's awesome. I'm jealous. But I always love going on those types of trips because that's how you do bring in inspiration ideas back to the club. You see those types of things and you see how they do it differently in Europe, or you just get an idea anywhere and bring that back in. That's
don't you have a whole show comprised of traveling and doing some cool things already? So you kind of already beat everybody else to the punch there.
Yeah, I have fun doing it. Ben, how about you, sir?
Dominique's just trying to find his way to play through.
Yes, we'll get you on there, and we'll do it from Dunwoody. That'd be fun. Ben, how about you? What outside of the club business, what are you interested in, and what are some of your passions?
So, Dominique can attest to this. I'm definitely a big family man. I have 2 young kids, a 1.5 and a 3.5-year-old. So they certainly occupy a lot of time for me.
Oh, yeah.
But my wife and I are also, involved in our church and have led small groups. And, she volunteers with the high school ministry at our church and things like that. So a lot of it, with how much time we do spend here, I do try to focus a lot of my time outside of work, just try to be very intentional of it being family time. That's probably the biggest thing for me where I draw inspiration from, is just trying to make sure that, I'm kind of going down the path that's best for my family and keep them as my main focus.
That's fantastic. It's so important. And I think a lot of people can get wrapped up in the job and they lose focus sometimes of what's really important in life. And that's great that you're keeping that in front of mind. And that this is the most important time in any child's life, that's for sure. So guys, appreciate it. I really enjoyed it. I think there's a lot of great information that our listeners are going to take back and hopefully put into action in their club. So I just want to thank you so much for sharing your wisdom here with me.
Absolutely. Thank you, Gabe. Appreciate you having us on.
Thanks for the opportunity, my man.
2 awesome guys right there doing it right. Well, thank you for joining me here on Private Club Radio this week, and hope you will come back next week once again. Between now and next week, I would love it if you could share this episode with just one person in the industry. That helps our show grow, and it would mean the world to me. Now, before I let you go, let me mention one more time about one of our featured sponsors that I'm so excited about, Member Text. Member Text is a text messaging platform that can help you replace a lot of the email you're sending. It frees up club staff time and resources, and your members will be happier for it. Check it out at membertext.net and tell them Gabe sent you.
Private Club Radio is brought to you by Concert Golf Partners, helping to preserve and enhance private golf and country clubs. Visit concertgolfpartners.com to learn more about the recapitalization process.